My grandfather promised the condo at Seabrook Bay was my escape. The one thing my parents could never touch. He was wrong. Staring at the county records, I saw a signature that looked nothing like mine, authorizing a sale I never agreed to. My parents hadn't just stolen $300,000 of real estate, they had forged my name while he lay dying, erasing his legacy to save their own crumbling reputation. The light in my apartment was always gray, filtered through the grime of the city window and the towering brick wall of the neighboring building just 10 feet away. It was a stark contrast to the light I remembered from my childhood, the kind that used to pour like liquid gold across the weathered deck of my grandfather's condo in Seabrook Bay. Here in Glenford Heights, I was Alice Ross, a 32-year-old marketing analyst who spent 10 hours a day staring at spreadsheets and wondering if my life was ever going to actually start. But in my head, I was still the girl running barefoot on the sand, waiting for Grandpa Henry to wave from the balcony. My apartment was a testament to my stubbornness. It was small, cramping my style with its mismatched furniture and the persistent hum of a refrigerator that was likely older than I was. My parents, Martin and Claire Ross, hated it. They viewed my refusal to let them buy me a condo in their preferred gated community as a personal insult, a rejection of their brand. To them, everything was a brand. The Ross family name meant success, polish, and appearances. I was the smudge on the lens. I checked the time on my phone, 6:30 in the evening. I was late for dinner, again. Dinner at my parents' house was not a meal. It was a performance. I drove my 10-year-old sedan through the wrought iron gates of their neighborhood, feeling the familiar tightening in my chest. The streets here were too wide, the lawns too green, the silence too heavy. When I pulled into their driveway, my brother's car was already there. It was a brand-new, charcoal gray sports coupe, gleaming under the porch lights. Of course it was. I took a breath, checked my reflection in the rearview mirror to make sure I looked presentable enough to avoid a comment about my tired eyes, and went inside. The dining room was set for 4, crystal glasses, heavy silver cutlery, and a floral centerpiece that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. My mother, Claire, was adjusting a napkin with the precision of a surgeon. She looked up as I entered, her smile tight and not quite reaching her eyes. "Alice, you made it," she said, her tone implying she had expected me to fail. "We were just about to start without you." Traffic was bad coming out of the city. I said, taking my designated seat. "Hi, Dad." "Hi, Ethan." My father, Martin, was pouring wine. He was a handsome man in a terrifyingly corporate way. His silver hair perfectly coiffed, his suit jacket removed to show a crisp white shirt that showed no sign of a day's wear. "Glad you could join us." "Alice," he said smoothly. Ethan, my younger brother by 4 years, grinned at me. He had the same easy charm as our father, but without the undercurrent of steel. He was soft, spoiled, and currently swirling a glass of red wine he barely understood. "Did you see the beast in the driveway?" Ethan asked, jerking his head toward the garage. "Hard to miss," I said. "New? Picked it up yesterday. Dad knew a guy at the dealership. Got a sweet financing deal on it. It drives like a dream. 0 to 60 in 4 seconds. I looked at my father. He beamed at Ethan with a pride he rarely directed my way. He needed something reliable for his new position. Martin said, "Image is everything in sales. Alice, you know that." I nodded, looking down at my empty plate. I was still paying off my student loans because my parents believed that struggle built character, at least for their daughter, for their son. Apparently, character was built with leather seats and horsepower. "How is Grandpa?" I asked, cutting through the self-congratulatory air. The silence that followed was brief but heavy. Claire sighed, a delicate, practiced sound. "Oh, you know Henry," she said, waving a hand dismissively. "He has his good days and his bad days. The doctors say he is stable. I visited him 2 weeks ago, and he did not look stable. Mom, he looked frail. He barely recognized me at first." My father set the wine bottle down with a definitive clink. "He is 89 years old. Alice, he is tired. We have the best specialists seeing him. There is no need to be dramatic. I am not being dramatic, I said, keeping my voice level. I am worried. He kept talking about the condo. He wanted to know when I was coming to Seabrook. Claire's eyes narrowed slightly. That condo is a money pit, she said sharply. We have been telling him to sell it for years. The salt air eats right through the maintenance budget. It is just a burden at this point. It is his home. I said, it is the only place he ever really loved. It is an asset, Martin corrected, his voice dropping an octave, and a depreciating one if not managed correctly. We are handling it. Alice, let us worry about your grandfather's affairs. You just focus on your job. How is that going? Still enjoying the data entry? It is market analysis, I said, feeling the familiar heat of shame rising in my cheeks. And yes, it is going fine. Good, Martin said, signaling that the topic of Grandpa Henry was closed. Because in this economy, you are lucky to have stability. The rest of the dinner was a blur of Ethan talking about his weekend plans and my parents nodding approvingly. I ate the roast chicken, which was perfectly cooked and completely tasteless, and felt the distance between us growing wide enough to swallow me whole. I was the observer at their table, the audience for their success. When I left that night, I did not hug them. I just promised to call later. 2 days later, the text came. I was in the middle of a meeting about quarterly projections when my phone buzzed against the table. I usually ignored it, but something made me flip it over. Ethan, Grandpa's not doing well. Mom says come now, hospital. I did not excuse myself politely. I stood up, gathered my things, and walked out while my boss was mid-sentence. The drive to the hospital was a nightmare of adrenaline and terror. I merged onto the highway, pushing my old car to 80, praying the engine wouldn't seize. My mind replayed the last time I saw him. He had been sitting in his wheelchair by the window of the assisted living facility, looking out at the parking lot as if it were the ocean. I promised I would take you back there. Grandpa. I had told him, I know. Alley girl. He had whispered, I know. When I burst into the hospital room, the air was thick with the smell of antiseptic and dying flowers. My parents were there, standing by the window, talking in hushed, urgent tones. Ethan was sitting in the corner, looking pale and terrified, tapping his foot on the linoleum. I went straight to the bed. Grandpa Henry looked so small, the man who had taught me to body surf, who had built me sandcastles tall enough to stand in, was reduced to a skeleton under a thin white sheet. His breathing was shallow, a rattling sound that seemed to shake his entire frame. Grandpa? I whispered, taking his hand. It was cold and dry, like paper. His eyelids fluttered. For a second, I didn't think he would see me. Then, his blue eyes, faded by cataracts, but still undeniably his, focused on my face. Alice, he breathed. I am here, Grandpa. I am right here. He tried to move his other hand, fumbling for something on the bedside table. I looked. It was an old, battered photograph. The edges were soft and white from years of handling. It was a picture of the balcony at Seabrook Bay, taken at sunrise. He pushed it toward me. His grip was surprisingly strong for a dying man. Take it, he rasped. I took the photo, my vision blurring with tears. I have it. Don't let them. He coughed, a terrible, wet sound that made my parents stop their whispering and turn toward us. Don't let them take your place away from you. Alice, it is yours. I made sure. Shh, rest now. Henry, Claire said, stepping forward, her heels clicking sharply on the floor. You need to save your strength. He ignored her. He looked only at me. Promise me, he whispered. I promise. I sobbed, clutching the photo to my chest. I promise. Grandpa. He closed his eyes then. A long exhale left his lungs, and the tension in his hand released. The rattle stopped. The machine next to the bed began a high, steady whine. I did not look at my parents. I just laid my head on his chest and cried. Feeling the silence of the room press down on me, I felt a hand on my shoulder, patting me awkwardly. It was Ethan. My parents stayed by the window, and I heard my father say, softly but clearly, "I will call the lawyer." The funeral was a blur of black suits and polite condolences. My parents were perfect hosts, accepting sympathy with grace. Steering conversations away from anything messy, I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. A week later, we gathered at the law firm of Caldwell and Price for the reading of the will. The conference room was vast, paneled in dark mahogany that smelled of lemon polish and old money. Mr. Caldwell, a man who looked like he had been carved out of the same wood as the walls, sat at the head of the table. My parents sat together, a united front. Ethan sat next to them, looking bored. I sat on the opposite side, clutching my purse. Inside, I had the photo Grandpa had given me. Mr. Caldwell went through the formalities. The reading was dry, legalistic, to my daughter, Claire Ross. I leave the entirety of my investment portfolio, my cash holdings, and the family home in Glenford Heights. My mother nodded, a tiny, satisfied motion. I did not care about the money. I knew there was a lot of it. Grandpa had been shrewd in his day, but I never expected a dime. I had always been the lesser child, the one who was expected to make her own way. However, Mr. Caldwell continued, peering over his reading glasses, regarding the property located at 442 Ocean View Drive, Unit 4B, Seabrook Bay. My father shifted in his seat. Mr. Caldwell cleared his throat. This property has been conveyed via a separate deed executed by Mr. Caldwell prior to his death. It is not part of the probate estate. The deed transfers the property immediately and outright to his granddaughter, Alice Ross. The room went absolutely silent. I blinked. Sure, I had misheard. The condo? My condo? Excuse me? Claire's voice was brittle. There must be a mistake. We discussed this with Henry. He knew that property was to be put into the family trust. There is no mistake. Mrs. Ross, Mr. Caldwell said calmly. I prepared the deed myself at Henry's specific instruction 3 months ago. It was recorded immediately. The title is in Alice's name. It is a done deal. I felt a rush of emotion so strong it made me dizzy. Gratitude, overwhelming and pure, followed instantly by a wave of guilt. He had given me the one thing everyone knew was the jewel of the family assets. Not in value, perhaps the stocks were worth millions, but in sentiment, in soul. Martin leaned forward, his smooth mask slipping just a fraction. Well, that is a surprise, he said, but perhaps it is for the best. It keeps the estate taxes simpler if it is out of the trust. He turned his gaze to me. His eyes were cold, calculating. Wow. Alice, he said, forcing a smile that looked like a baring of teeth. That is a huge responsibility for a young woman. The HOA fees, the property taxes, the assessments, it is a lot to handle. I did not know. I stammered. Of course you didn't, Claire said, recovering her composure. Henry was always so sentimental. She looked at me with a mixture of pity and annoyance. Look, Alice, we know you are busy with your job. You are barely making rent as it is. We can't expect you to manage a second home. I can manage, I said, though my voice sounded small in the big room. Martin held up a hand. We will help. Of course, we can handle the management. We will roll it into our existing property portfolio, handle the rentals to cover the costs, and you won't have to worry about a thing. We will just keep everything under the family umbrella. I nodded, vaguely. My head was spinning. I didn't want to fight. I just wanted to go to the beach. Thank you, I said softly. Claire exchanged a look with Martin, a look that said, problem solved. But as I walked out of the law office, holding the copy of the deed Mr. Caldwell had handed me, I felt a spark of something new. It was a fragile, flickering warmth in my chest. I owned something. I had a place where the air smelled like salt and the noise of the city couldn't reach me. For the next 4 months, that spark was the only thing keeping me going. My job became a grind of meaningless numbers. My apartment felt smaller and dingier every day, but at night, I would lie in bed and mentally renovate the condo. I picked out paint colors: pale blue for the living room, a soft sand color for the bedroom. I browsed furniture online, imagining a big, squashy sectional facing the sliding glass doors. I calculated how much I could make if I rented it out on Airbnb for just the peak summer months, leaving the off-season for myself every time I tried to go. However, there was a wall. I called my mother in April, looking to go down for a weekend to assess the condition. "Oh, Alice, you can't go down there yet," she said, her voice sounding harried. "The keys are still with the estate attorney for inventory. It is a legal mess. You know how these things are. But Mr. Caldwell said the deed was recorded." I argued. "It is mine. It is not that simple." "Honey," she sighed, "there are transfer taxes and utility switchovers. If you go down there now and trip on a loose board, the insurance won't cover it because the policy is in limbo. Just be patient. Let your father handle the boring stuff. I let it go." I was tired, and I trusted them. They were the experts in money and property. I was just the daughter who rented. In May, I tried again. "Dad, I want to go to Seabrook for Memorial Day." "Bad idea," Martin said over the phone. "I had a contractor go down there to look at the HVAC. He says the unit is shot, no AC, and there is a mold issue in the bathroom. It is a construction zone. Alice, you do not want to stay there until we get it remediated." "How much will that cost?" I asked, panicking about my savings. "Don't worry about the money," he said smoothly. "We are fronting the costs for repairs. We will settle up later when the estate closes. Just sit tight. We are doing this for you." I sat tight. I worked. I paid my rent. I saved every extra dollar I had for the settling up my father mentioned. By July, the heat in the city was unbearable. My apartment had no AC, just a window unit that rattled and wheezed. At work, the condo became my identity. My coworkers knew I was miserable, so I spun them a fantasy. "I am going to fix it up," I told Sarah, the girl in the cubicle next to me, as we ate sad salads at our desks. "It is right on the water. You can hear the waves from the bedroom. You are like a secret heiress," Sarah teased, poking me with her fork. "The girl with the secret beach condo. When are you inviting us?" "Soon," I promised, pulling up the pictures on my phone for the 100th time. The ones I had taken years ago. The view from the balcony. The kitchen with its dated yellow tile. As soon as the repairs are done, I looked at the photos, and a resolve hardened in my stomach. I was 32 years old. I owned the place, mold or no mold, AC or no AC. I was going. I would drive down this weekend. I wouldn't ask permission. I would just go. If the keys weren't there, I would call a locksmith. It was my house. "Hey, Alice?" I looked up. It was Jen, one of the junior analysts. She was standing at my desk, holding her phone, a weird expression on her face. "Yeah? You said your grandpa's place was in Seabrook Bay, right? Ocean View Drive?" "Yeah. Unit 4B. Why?" Jen bit her lip. She looked uncomfortable. "I was just looking at rentals for my vacation next month. Just browsing Zillow, you know? And I saw a listing that looked like the pictures you showed us." My heart skipped a beat. Maybe Dad had listed it for rent already? That would be annoying, but typical. He probably wanted to generate income to pay for the repairs. "Oh, really?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Is it up for rent?" Jen turned her phone screen toward me. "No, Alice," she said softly. "It says it's sold." I stared at the screen. It was a real estate app. The photo was unmistakable. It was professional, high resolution, wide angle. But it was my grandfather's living room. The yellow tile in the kitchen had been replaced with white subway tile. The walls were freshly painted a sterile gray. The furniture was staged. Modern, generic, soulless. My eyes scanned down to the bold text at the bottom of the listing. 442 Ocean View Drive. Unit 4B. Status: closed. Sold. Above. Asking price: $540,000. Date sold: June 15th. The room seemed to tilt. The noise of the office, the clacking keyboards, the printer, the low hum of chatter, faded into a rushing sound in my ears like the ocean during a storm. June 15th. That was 3 weeks ago. That was when my father told me the HVAC was broken. That was when my mother told me the paperwork was delayed. That can't be right, I whispered, my voice trembling. I reached out and took Jen's phone. I scrolled through the photos, the view from the balcony, the bedroom, the bathroom, gleaming, renovated, mold-free. It wasn't just sold, it had been flipped. Someone had fixed it up and sold it, and I had been sitting here, saving my pennies, waiting for permission to visit a home that apparently didn't belong to me anymore. A cold, heavy dread settled in the pit of my stomach, heavier than grief, sharper than anger. It was the feeling of the floor dropping out. "Thanks, Jen," I said, handing the phone back. I stood up. My legs felt numb. I need to make a call. I walked out of the office, into the hallway, and stared at the wall. My grandfather's voice echoed in my head, clear as the day he died. "Don't let them take your place away from you." I looked at the listing on my own phone now. Sold. They hadn't just taken it, they had sold it to strangers, and they hadn't told me a single word. The drive home from work was a blur of red taillights and rising bile. I did not remember parking my car. I did not remember walking up the 3 flights of stairs to my apartment. The only thing that existed was the image burned into my retinas. The Zillow listing on Jen's phone, the white subway tile, the gray walls, the word sold. I threw my bag on the floor and sat on my couch, not even bothering to turn on the overhead light. The glow of my laptop screen was the only illumination in the room, casting long, shivering shadows against the wall. I pulled up the listing again. My fingers felt cold and clumsy on the trackpad. There it was, 442 Ocean View Drive, Unit 4B. I needed to be sure. I needed to be absolutely 100% certain before I accused anyone of anything. My parents were masters of making me feel crazy. They gaslit with the precision of heart surgeons. If I went to them with a hunch, they would dissect me. I opened a folder on my laptop labeled Seabrook Memories. It was full of digital scans of old photos, pictures I had taken on my phone over the years, and a few shots I had saved from my grandfather's Facebook page, which he had used mostly to post pictures of seagulls. I pulled up a photo from 3 years ago. It was a selfie I had taken on the balcony. In the background, the railing had a distinct notch where a seagull had pecked away the wood, and behind that, a twisted cypress tree leaned precariously over the dunes. I switched tabs to the real estate listing. I clicked on the photo of the balcony view. I zoomed in. The railing had been sanded and repainted, but the notch was still there, filled in with wood putty but visible if you knew where to look. And the tree, the same twisted cypress, windblown and defiant, framed exactly the same way against the horizon. It was the same balcony. I went to the kitchen photos. The listing showed a gleaming, modern space. I looked at the floor. They had replaced the yellow tiles, but they hadn't moved the plumbing. The sink was in the exact same awkward corner under the window. The view from that window looked out onto the neighboring building's blue siding. I checked my old photos. Blue siding. It was Grandpa's condo. There was no doubt. I looked at the sale details again. Closed. June 15th. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. June 15th. On June 15th, I had asked my mother if I could go down to the condo to measure for curtains. She had told me the keys were with the contractor because the floors were being refinished. They were being refinished. All right, for someone else. I looked at the clock. It was 11:15 at night. I didn't care. I grabbed my phone and dialed my mother's number. It rang 4 times, then 5. Finally, her voice came on the line, thick with sleep and irritation. "Alice, is everything all right?" "It is past 11. Mom," I said. My voice was shaking so hard I could barely get the word out. I had to grip the phone with both hands to keep it steady. "Mom, did you sell the condo?" There was a pause, a long, heavy silence that screamed louder than any confession. "Alice, you are waking up your father," she said, dodging the question with practiced ease. "Did you sell Grandpa's condo?" I asked again, louder this time. "I'm looking at a listing online." "Mom, It says it sold in June. It says it is closed. I heard the rustle of sheets and a muffled mumble that sounded like my father asking what was going on. Honey, you are misunderstanding the online records, Claire said, her voice shifting from sleepy to patronizing. The internet is full of glitches. Those sites scrape data from all over the place. Sometimes they list things as sold when they are just transferred between trusts. It is a technicality. It says sold for $540,000. I said, that is a very specific technicality. Alice, calm down, she said. You are sounding hysterical. I am not hysterical, I yelled, standing up. I'm looking at pictures of the inside. It has been renovated. The phone was fumbled, and then my father's voice came on the line. It was deeper, rougher, devoid of the polished charm he wore in public. Alice, what is this about? The condo? Dad? The listing? Did you sell it? Martin sighed, a sound of profound disappointment. Alice, we have been over this. The real estate market is incredibly volatile right now. We had to make some moves to secure the asset. You do not understand how estate taxes work. If we didn't leverage the property, we were looking at a massive liability that would have wiped out your grandfather's entire legacy. So you sold it? I pressed. Tears hot and stinging in my eyes. You sold my house? It wasn't your house, Alice, Martin snapped. It was an asset in a complex portfolio. And yes, a transaction occurred, but it is for the family's benefit. We are protecting you. You have no idea what it takes to manage this level of wealth. He gave it to me, I screamed. He gave it to me. The deed was in my name. And who do you think pays the bills? Alice? Martin's voice was cold steel now. Who paid for the funeral? Who paid for the lawyers? Who has been subsidizing your life since the day you were born? You are being paranoid, and you are being ungrateful. We are handling business. Go to sleep. We will discuss this when you are capable of acting like an adult. The line went dead. I stood in the center of my dark living room, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone. Paranoid, ungrateful. You do not understand. They had used those words on me my entire life. They were the magic words that made me doubt my own reality. Whenever I questioned why Ethan got a car and I got a bus pass, I was ungrateful. Whenever I asked why they missed my college graduation to go to a gala, I didn't understand their obligations. But this time, I had a listing. I had a date. I sat back down at the computer. My hands were no longer shaking. They were cold and steady with a new, terrifying purpose. If they said I didn't understand the records, I would learn. I opened a new browser tab and searched for Seabrook County Recorder's Office. The website looked like it hadn't been updated since the late 90s. It was a mess of beige backgrounds and tiny blue hyperlinks. I found the link for public records search and clicked it. A pop-up informed me that I needed to create an account and pay a subscription fee to view document images. I pulled out my credit card, the one with the $2,000 limit that I was struggling to pay off, and entered the numbers, $20 for 24-hour access. I hit submit. The screen refreshed. Welcome, user. I typed in the search bar. Ross, Alice. The little spinning wheel icon churned for what felt like an eternity. My breath caught in my throat. A list of results populated the screen. The first one was dated 7 months ago. Deed. Grantor. Henry Caldwell. Grantee. Alice Ross. That was the one Mr. Caldwell had given me, the one that proved Grandpa had kept his promise. I scanned down. There were only 2 other entries. The second entry was dated March 12th of this year. Document type, quitclaim deed. Grantor, Alice Ross. Grantee, Bayview Haven, LLC. I stared at the screen. The air left my lungs. Quitclaim deed. That was a document used to transfer property, and it said the grantor, the person giving the property away, was me. I clicked on the document number to open the PDF. The image loaded slowly, line by line. It was a standard legal form. At the top, in bold letters, quitclaim deed, for valuable consideration, receipt of which is hereby acknowledged. Alice Ross, a single woman, grantor, hereby grants and conveys to Bayview Haven, LLC, grantee. All right, title, and interest in. I scrolled down to the bottom of the page. There was a signature line. Above it was printed, Alice Ross. On the line was a signature. I leaned in until my nose almost touched the screen. It read, Alice Ross. It was loopy. It slanted to the right. It looked, at a glance, like a signature. But it wasn't mine. My signature is sharp. I write my A with a pointy top. This A was round. I cross my T's with a short, downward dash. These T's were crossed with long, flat lines. I looked at the date next to the signature, March 12th. I closed my eyes and cast my mind back to March. Where was I in March? March 12th. It was a Tuesday. I was in Chicago. I opened my work calendar on my phone to verify. Yes, March 10th to 14th. Chicago Trade Show. I had been standing in a booth at McCormick Place, handing out brochures for 8 hours a day, 500 miles away from Seabrook Bay. I looked back at the document. Below the signature was a notary acknowledgement. State of Texas, County of Seabrook, on this 12th day of March. Before me, Lyle Garrett, Notary Public, personally appeared Alice Ross, who proved to me on the basis of satisfactory evidence to be the person whose name is subscribed to the within instrument. Lyle Garrett. I had never met a Lyle Garrett. I had never been to his office. I had certainly not appeared before him in Seabrook County on a day when I was freezing my butt off in Chicago. It was a forgery, a blunt, flat-out forgery. My parents hadn't just sold the house. They had impersonated me. They had someone sign my name. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to swallow hard to keep from vomiting. This wasn't just managing assets. This was a felony. I went back to the search results. The third entry? Document type, warranty deed, grantor, Bayview Haven, LLC, grantee, David and Susan Mason. Date, June 15th, this was the sale. Bayview Haven, LLC, whatever that was, had sold the condo to the Masons. I clicked on the settlement statement associated with that deed. It was a breakdown of the money. Sale price, $540,000. Settlement charges to seller, $32,000. Net cash to seller, $508,000. $508,000. That was the number. That was the price of my grandfather's love. That was the price of my future. I scanned the document for an address. Where did the money go? There, under seller information. Bayview Haven, LLC. The mailing address listed was 14 Oakwood Lane, Glenford Heights. My parents' house. Bayview Haven, LLC, wasn't a company. It was a shell. It was them. They had transferred my house to themselves using a forged signature, and then sold it to pocket $500,000. I printed everything. The ink in my printer was low, so the pages came out streaked with white lines. But they were legible. I printed the deed from Grandpa. I printed the forged quitclaim deed. I printed the deed to the Masons. I printed the settlement statement showing my parents' address. I stacked the warm papers on my desk. It was 1 a.m. I grabbed my keys. The drive to their house usually took 40 minutes. I made it in 25. The streets were empty, the city asleep, but my mind was screaming. When I pulled up to the gate of their community, the security guard, a man named Ralph who had known me since I was a teenager, looked surprised. Late night? Miss Ross? He asked, leaning out of his booth. Family emergency. Ralph, I said. He buzzed me in. The house was dark, looming against the night sky like a fortress. I didn't care. I parked my car crookedly in the driveway, blocking Ethan's precious new sports car. I grabbed the stack of papers and marched to the front door. I rang the bell, once, twice, then I pounded on the wood with my fist. "Open up!" I yelled. A light flicked on in the upstairs hallway. Then the foyer chandelier blazed to life. I saw a shadow move behind the frosted glass, and the door swung open. My father stood there, wearing a silk robe, his face purple with rage. "Alice, have you lost your mind? It is 2 a.m. The neighbors—" I pushed past him into the foyer. I didn't take off my shoes. I marched straight into the living room and threw the stack of papers onto the pristine glass coffee table. They landed with a heavy slap, sliding across the surface. "I know what you did," I said. My voice was low, trembling with a fury I had never let myself feel before. Claire appeared at the top of the stairs, wrapping a cashmere shawl around her shoulders. She looked pale, her face devoid of makeup, making her look older and harder. "Alice, keep your voice down," she hissed, descending the stairs. "You are acting like a lunatic." I pointed at the papers. "I am acting like a victim of fraud." I said, "That is the title record. Mom, that is a quitclaim deed dated March 12th. My father walked over to the table and looked down at the papers. But he didn't touch them. He crossed his arms. "So you figured out how to use the internet. Congratulations. I was in Chicago on March 12th. I said, staring at him. "I was at a trade show. I have the plane tickets. I have the hotel receipts. I was 500 miles away when Alice Ross supposedly walked into Lyle Garrett's office and signed away her inheritance." I turned to Claire. "That is not my signature. Mom, it is a forgery. You forged my name?" Claire reached the bottom of the stairs. She didn't look at the papers. She looked at me, her expression shifting from annoyance to a sort of pitying disappointment. "Oh, Alice," she sighed. "You are making this so ugly. It was a clerical matter. We had power of attorney." "No, you didn't," I shouted. "You had power of attorney for Grandpa, not for me. You have no legal right to sign my name. We were acting as your guardians," Martin bellowed, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. "We are your parents. We created that LLC to shield you from liability. You created that LLC to funnel the money into your bank account." I grabbed the settlement statement and shoved it toward him. "Look at the address. Dad, it goes to this house. Bayview Haven is you. You stole the house, and you kept the money. $500,000. Martin slapped the paper out of my hand. "Watch your tone," he shouted. "You think that money is just sitting in a pile? You think we are swimming in cash like Scrooge McDuck? That money went to debts, Alice. Debts that keep this family afloat. Debts that paid for your college, your braces, your—" "My college loans are in my name," I screamed back. "I am still paying them. You didn't pay for anything." Ethan appeared in the doorway of the kitchen. He was wearing boxer shorts and a t-shirt, his hair messy, looking like a frightened child. "What is going on?" he asked, his voice wavering. "Why is Alice yelling? Go back to bed." "Ethan," Martin snapped without looking at him. "No, Ethan, come look at this," I said, gesturing to the papers. "Mom and Dad committed a felony. They forged my signature and sold Grandpa's condo." Ethan looked at the papers, then at our parents. He didn't look surprised. He looked guilty. He rubbed the back of his neck, looking at the floor. "Mom, I told you she would find out," he mumbled. "Shut up, Ethan," Claire snapped, her eyes flashing. Ethan looked up, his face flushing. "Well, you did. You guys said you had to do something with the condo because of the taxes. You said the IRS was coming down on us and—" "Ethan!" Martin roared. "One more word and you are cut off. Do you hear me?" Ethan clamped his mouth shut. Shrinking back into the kitchen shadows, the silence that followed was ringing. I looked at them, really looked at them. My mother, with her cashmere shawl and her lies. My father, with his silk robe and his bullying. My brother, with his new car and his silence. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't estate planning. It was theft, plain and simple. They were broke, or close to it, and they had cannibalized me to keep up appearances. "So that is it," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. "You are broke." "We are not broke," Martin spat, adjusting his robe. "We have liquidity issues. It is temporary. We intended to pay you back. We were going to set up a trust for you once the market turned. You stole it." I said, "You stole Grandpa's gift. He wanted me to have that place so I could get away from you, and you couldn't stand that. You couldn't stand that I had something you couldn't control." "Alice, be reasonable," Claire said, stepping forward. her voice softening into that manipulative sweetness I knew so well. "We can fix this. We can call the estate attorney in the morning. We will work out a payment plan. There is no need to involve outsiders. It is a family matter." "A payment plan?" I laughed. A harsh, jagged sound. "You sold my house to strangers. The Masons live there now. They are sleeping in my bedroom. You can't fix that with a payment plan." I picked up the papers. "I am leaving." I said, "Alice, if you walk out that door with those papers," Martin said, his voice dropping to a menace, "you are done. You are out of this family. No more Sunday dinners, no more help, no more nothing. You will be dead to us." I looked at him. I thought about the gray light in my apartment. I thought about the years of feeling like I wasn't good enough. I thought about Grandpa Henry whispering, "Don't let them take your place. I am already dead to you." "Dad," I said, "I am just a bank account you haven't drained yet." I turned and walked out. I didn't look back. I got in my car, my hands shaking so hard I could barely put the key in the ignition. I drove out of the gates, the tears finally falling, hot and fast, blurring the road. I drove aimlessly for a while, unable to go back to my empty apartment. I pulled into a 24-hour diner parking lot and just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, expecting a text from my mother, maybe an apology, maybe a threat. It was an email notification from Credit Watch Security. Subject, New Account Alert. I frowned, wiping my eyes. I opened the email. "Dear Alice, we have detected a new credit inquiry and account opening in your name. Creditor, LuxCard Gold. Status, approved. Credit limit, $15,000. I stared at the screen. I hadn't applied for a credit card. I clicked the details. The application date was yesterday. The mailing address for the card was 14 Oakwood Lane. A fresh wave of horror washed over me, colder than the last. It wasn't just the condo. They had my social security number. They had my birth certificate. They had everything. They weren't just done with me. They were actively using me. If they were desperate enough to forge a deed, they were desperate enough to run up debt in my name to save their sinking ship. The condo was just the beginning. I drove home. The sun was starting to color the sky a bruised purple by the time I walked into my kitchen. I sat down at my small, wobbly table. I spread out the printed deeds. I took a sticky note and wrote Lyle Garrett on it and stuck it to the forgery. I wrote Bayview Haven equals Mom Dad on another. Then I laid my phone down next to them. The email about the credit card glowing on the screen. I was alone. I had no money. I was up against people who had played the game of wealth and power their entire lives. But looking at that forged signature, that stiff, alien scrawl that mocked my very identity, I knew one thing. If I didn't stop them, I wouldn't just lose a house. I would cease to exist. They would consume me, piece by piece, document by document, until Alice Ross was nothing more than a shell company for their failures. I picked up a pen. I wasn't going to let them rewrite me. I was going to write the ending myself. The office of Turner Legal Group was wedged between a dry cleaner and a discount dentist in a strip mall on the edge of town. It was a far cry from the mahogany-paneled sanctum of Caldwell and Price, where my grandfather's will had been read. Here, the carpet was a faded industrial gray, and the waiting room smelled faintly of burnt coffee and photocopier toner. Mia Turner, the attorney I had found after a frantic Google search for affordable real estate litigation, did not look like the sharks my parents kept on retainer. She was in her late 40s, wearing a cardigan over a blouse that had seen better days, and her desk was a geological formation of paper stacks, but her eyes were sharp, intelligent, and currently narrowed at the documents I had spread out before her. She picked up the quitclaim deed, holding it under the harsh fluorescent light of her desk lamp. She adjusted her glasses, squinting at the signature that was supposed to be mine. "So, let me get this straight," Mia said, her voice raspy, like she smoked too much or argued too often. "You are telling me you were in Chicago on March 12th. I nodded. "I have the flight itinerary and the hotel receipt. I can pull them up on my phone right now." Mia waved a hand, dismissing the offer. I believe you. I am looking at this notary stamp. Lyle Garrett. She set the paper down and looked at me. Alice, this signature looks stiff. If I had to guess, I would say someone traced it or practiced it a few times before putting pen to paper. And if you were in Chicago, then this acknowledgement by Mr. Garrett is a lie. That makes this a fraudulent instrument. She leaned back in her chair, the springs groaning. We are looking at potential forgery, identity theft, and elder financial abuse, she said flatly. Your parents didn't just bend the rules, if what you are saying is true. They broke the law. Hearing a stranger say it out loud made the air leave the room. It was one thing for me to scream it in my parents' foyer at 2 a.m. It was another to have a legal professional confirm that my family was capable of a felony. What do I do? I asked. The question felt small. Mia took a sip of cold coffee from a mug that said, "World's okayest lawyer." Well, there are 2 tracks here, she explained, civil and criminal. On the civil side, we file a complaint to quiet title. Basically, we go to court and ask a judge to declare that the deed to the LLC is void because it was forged. If that deed is void, then the sale to the Masons is invalid because the LLC never owned the house to begin with. The Masons? I asked. The people living there now? Mia nodded grimly. Unfortunately, yes, they are what we call bona fide purchasers for value. They likely didn't know about the fraud, but if the deed was forged, the law generally favors the original owner. However, dragging them into this makes it messy. She leaned forward, her expression serious. Alice, I need to be honest with you about what this looks like. A quiet title action is not quick. It involves discovery, depositions, and forensic handwriting experts. It is expensive. I can take the case on a contingency basis if we seek damages, but you will still have court costs. She paused. But the financial cost is the easy part. The hard part is that you will be suing your parents. You will be accusing them of fraud in a public record. If we win, they could face financial ruin. If the police get involved, they could face jail time. This will nuke whatever relationship you have left with them. There will be no coming back from this. Are you prepared for that? I looked past her, out the window. The view was of a busy intersection, cars jerking forward in stop-and-go traffic, exhaust fumes shimmering in the heat. It was noisy, chaotic, and ugly. In my mind, I wasn't there. I was walking down the wooden boardwalk at Seabrook Bay. I could feel the rough grain of the wood under my feet. I could smell the salt spray and the jasmine that grew on the trellis by Grandpa's door. I remembered the sound of his laugh, a deep, rumbling thing that made his chest shake when I told him a bad joke. Don't let them take your place, he had said. He hadn't just meant the condo. He meant my dignity. He meant my autonomy. My parents had spent 32 years telling me who I was. The lesser child. The disappointment. The project. If I walked away now. If I let them keep the money and the lie. I would be agreeing with them. I would be signing my name to their version of my life. I looked back at Mia. They didn't just steal a house, I said softly. They stole his goodbye to me. Mia held my gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded. Okay, she said. I didn't sign the retainer agreement right then. I told her I needed a night to get my documents in order. That night, back in my apartment, I couldn't sleep. I sat in bed with my laptop, scrolling through forums on legal advice websites, inheritance theft, narcissistic parents, forgery statute of limitations. The stories were depressing, endless tales of families torn apart by greed, of siblings who never spoke again over a few $1,000s. Was I doing the right thing? Was I just being vindictive? Maybe Martin was right. Maybe they really were drowning in debt and this was a desperate move to save the family. Did that make it okay? I closed my eyes, trying to quiet my brain. A memory surfaced. A small, jagged shard of the past that I hadn't thought about in months. It was a week before Grandpa Henry died. I had been visiting him at the hospital. He was weak, barely awake. Claire had come in, looking flustered, checking her watch. We have to go. Alice, she had said, I need to take Henry downstairs. Downstairs? I had asked. For what? Just some administrative updates? She had said, avoiding my eyes. Insurance forms. They need to verify his ID for the new coverage plan. It will only take 20 minutes. I had offered to push his wheelchair. No, she had snapped. Too loud. Then she had forced a smile. No, honey, you go get some coffee. I can handle him. It is boring paperwork. I remembered watching them leave the room. Grandpa was slumped in the chair, looking confused. Claire was pushing him fast, like she was afraid someone would stop her. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding. Insurance forms didn't require you to drag a dying man out of his room. Notaries did. They had taken him to get something signed. Maybe not the deed itself. Grandpa had been clear about the condo, but something that gave them the power to act. Or maybe they had tried to get him to sign the deed, and he refused. So they had to forge it later. The timing was too tight. The secrecy was too thick. This wasn't an act of desperation. It was a heist. I grabbed my phone and emailed Mia at 3 a.m. Let's do it. File the complaint. 2 days later, the lawsuit was filed. Alice Ross versus Bayview Haven, LLC, Martin Ross, Claire Ross, and David and Susan Mason. Mia also advised me to go to the police. This is a crime. Alice, she told me as she handed me a copy of the civil complaint, if you want the court to take the forgery claims seriously, you need a police report. You need to be on record stating that your identity was stolen. Walking into the police station felt like walking off a cliff. I gave my statement to a desk officer, who looked bored until I mentioned the amount of money involved. Then I was told a detective would be in touch. The fallout was immediate. My parents must have been served with the lawsuit on a Thursday, because on Friday morning, my phone blew up. It wasn't them. They were smart enough, or advised by their lawyers, not to call me directly now that litigation had started. It was everyone else. My Aunt Linda, Claire's sister, called me while I was at work. Alice, what on earth are you doing? She demanded, her voice shrill. Your mother is devastated. She called me in tears. She says you are suing them? They stole my house. Aunt Linda, I said, walking into the stairwell for privacy. Oh, stop it, she said. Claire told me everything. She said there was a misunderstanding about the trust, and instead of talking to them like a grown-up, you hired some ambulance chaser to humiliate them. They are your parents. Alice, they paid for your braces. They forged my signature. I said, my voice shaking, that is not a misunderstanding. You are being a spoiled brat. Linda spat. Your grandfather would be ashamed of you, dragging the family name through the mud for money. I thought you were better than this. She hung up. Then came a text from my cousin Sarah. Really, Alice? Mom says you are trying to bankrupt your parents. Uninvite to the baby shower. Sorry. I sat on the concrete steps of the stairwell and cried for 10 minutes. They had gotten ahead of the story. They had spun the narrative. To the extended family, I wasn't the victim. I was the greedy, ungrateful daughter kicking her aging parents when they were down. I wiped my face, stood up, and went back to work. I had expected this. Mia had warned me, let it burn. I told myself, if the truth destroys the family, then the family was built on lies. The following Tuesday, I received a call from a detective, Ryan Klein. He asked me to come down to the station to discuss my report. Detective Klein was a man who looked like he lived on coffee and skepticism. His desk was piled high with folders, and he looked at me with tired, gray eyes. Ms. Ross, he said, gesturing for me to sit. I have been reviewing your statement regarding the property on Ocean View Drive. He opened a folder. You allege that the signature on the quitclaim deed dated March 12th is a forgery. It is, I said. I was in Chicago. I gave the desk officer my travel records. Yes, I have those, Klein said. He tapped a pen against the desk. But what caught my eye wasn't your travel dates. It was the notary. He turned the document around so I could see the stamp. Lyle Garrett. Do you know this man? Klein asked. No, I said. I have never heard of him. Klein leaned back, a grim smile touching his lips. Well, I have... Mr. Garrett is a name that has popped up in a few files recently, mostly regarding sketchy car loans and a few questionable wills. We have been trying to pin him down for months. He is what we call a fixer for paperwork, if you need a date changed or a witness who wasn't there. Lyle is the guy. My stomach turned. My parents hadn't just made a mistake. They had hired a professional criminal. So, this proves it? I asked. It helps, Klein said. But for a criminal charge against your parents, we need more than just the notary being dirty. We need to prove they directed him to do it. But I am going to open an investigation into Garrett based on this. And if he talks, well, that changes things. He gave me his card. If you remember anything else, call me. And Ms. Ross? Yes? Watch your back. People like Garrett get nervous when we start asking questions. I left the station feeling a strange mix of vindication and fear. I called Mia immediately. The police know Garrett. I told her, he is a known fixer. Mia let out a low whistle. That is huge. Alice, that is our leverage. If we can get Garrett to admit he falsified that signature, the civil case is a slam dunk, and it puts massive pressure on your parents to settle. We need to find him. I said. Mia hesitated. That is the police's job. The police are slow. I said, I need to see him. I need to look him in the eye. Mia sighed. I can't stop you, but I am coming with you. We found Lyle Garrett's address online. It wasn't an office in a business park. It was a room above a place called Quick Cash Payday Loans in a rundown part of the city, miles away from my parents' gated community. Mia drove her beat-up Honda. We parked across the street. This feels like a bad idea, Mia said, clutching her purse. I opened the car door. I need to know. We walked up a narrow, smelling staircase. At the top was a door with a peeling sticker that read, Lyle Garrett, Notary Public Process Server. I knocked. Come in, a voice yelled, sounding jittery. We pushed the door open. The office was small, hot, and cluttered with boxes. A ceiling fan wobbled dangerously overhead. Behind a metal desk sat a man who looked like a nervous rodent. He was thin, balding, and sweating through his dress shirt. Can I help you, ladies? He asked, his eyes darting between us. I walked straight to the desk and slapped the copy of the deed down. I am Alice Ross, I said. The color drained from his face so fast it was almost impressive. He looked at the paper, then at me. I don't, he stammered. You notarized this. I said, you said I appeared before you on March 12th. I was in Chicago. He stood up, knocking his chair back. I don't recall that specific transaction, he said, his voice rising in pitch. I notarize hundreds of documents. I follow procedure. If the ID matched— There was no ID, I shouted, because I wasn't there. Who brought you this? Was it Martin Ross? Was it Claire? Mia stepped forward. Mr. Garrett, I am Mia Turner, an attorney representing Miss Ross. We have already spoken to Detective Klein. He is very interested in your connection to this document. Garrett flinched at the detective's name. He looked at the phone on his desk as if it were a bomb. You need to leave, he said. Now. How much did they pay you? I asked. How much was my life worth? I said, get out, Garrett yelled. He reached for the phone. I am calling the police. Go ahead, Mia said. Ask for Detective Klein. Garrett's hand hovered over the receiver. Then, the phone rang. The sound was loud in the small room. Garrett jumped. He stared at the ringing phone, terrified. He picked it up slowly. Hello? He listened. His eyes locked on mine, wide and panicked. Yeah, he whispered. Yeah, they are here, right now. He listened again. He swallowed hard. I didn't say anything. I didn't. He went silent. He nodded, sweat dripping down his temple. Okay. He slammed the phone down. He looked at us, and his fear had turned into aggression. Get out, he hissed. You are trespassing. If you don't leave in 5 seconds, I am pulling the gun I keep in this drawer. Mia grabbed my arm. Alice, we are going. But now, Mia said, dragging me toward the door. We scrambled down the stairs and into the car. Mia locked the doors instantly. Who was on the phone? I asked. my heart hammering. I don't know, Mia said, starting the engine. But whoever it was, they knew we were there. She pulled out into traffic, checking the rearview mirror. Alice, this isn't just a forgery anymore, she said quietly. Someone is watching. We drove back to her office in silence. The reality of the situation was settling in. My parents weren't just messy, they were organized. They had a network, and they were watching me. When we got back to Mia's office, she went straight to her computer. I'm going to file an emergency motion for discovery, she said. We need to subpoena Garrett's phone records before he deletes them. Her computer pinged with a notification. She frowned. That is weird. What? I just got an email. It is from a Proton Mail account. Anonymous. She clicked it open. Her eyes widened. Alice, come look at this. I walked around the desk. The subject line was blank. The body of the email was empty except for an attachment. Mia opened the PDF. It was a scanned memo on letterhead that read, Seaside Title Group. It was dated February, a month before the forgery. It was an internal note from a title officer. Most of the text was redacted with black bars, but one paragraph was circled in red marker. Regarding File 442-OV, the grantor name on the draft deed is incorrect. Based on the instruction from Mrs. Ross, she insists we remove the trust language and prepare a direct transfer from Alice Ross to the LLC. I told her we need Alice's signature. Mrs. Ross stated, I will handle the signature, just give me the document. In the margin of the memo, in jagged handwriting, someone had written, This one doesn't match the original draft. Claire insisted we switch the deed. I stared at the screen. Seaside Title Group, that was the company that handled the closing for the Masons. This proved it. It proved premeditation. My mother hadn't just reacted to tax trouble. She had planned this. She had bullied the title company. She had told them, I will handle the signature. And someone inside that company knew it. Someone was scared enough, or guilty enough, to leak this to us. Mia looked up at me, a fierce grin spreading across her face. We have a whistleblower, she said. I looked at the handwritten note. Claire insisted. My mother, the woman who taught me how to tie my shoes, the woman who checked my homework. She hadn't just stolen the house, she had orchestrated the crime. I felt a coldness settle in my chest, replacing the fear. Print it, I said. Print it all. The anonymous memo lay on Mia's desk like a live grenade. It was a single sheet of paper, scanned crookedly, with the letterhead of Seaside Title Group at the top. The red marker circle around the paragraph was angry and jagged, drawing the eye immediately to the text that someone inside the company had risked their job to show us. Mia adjusted her glasses, reading the text aloud for the third time. Subject: File 4420V. Note regarding grantee designation. She looked up at me. Alice, look at this line here. It says, Draft prepared per original instruction listing Alice Ross as sole grantee. I stared at the words. My grandfather hadn't just told me he wanted me to have the condo, he had initiated the paperwork. The title company had actually drawn up a deed with my name on it. And then, right below that, the redacted section, and the handwritten note in the margin. This one doesn't match the original draft. Claire insisted we switch the deed. It means there are two versions of history, Mia said, her voice tight with focus. Version A is what Henry wanted. Version B is what your mother forced through. This memo proves that Seaside Title knew about version A and buried it. She grabbed her phone and hit a speed dial button. I am serving a subpoena on Seaside Title immediately, she said to me while the phone rang. We are going to ask for the entire file, every draft, every email, every sticky note, if they buried a deed. That is not just negligence, that is conspiracy. The next 48 hours were a blur of legal maneuvering that I barely understood. Mia fired off the subpoena, demanding production of documents within 5 business days. Seaside Title's lawyer, a man named Mr. Henderson, who sounded like he gargled gravel, called Mia back almost instantly to claim attorney-client privilege and proprietary work product. Mia put him on speakerphone so I could hear. Mr. Henderson, Mia said, her voice cool and dangerous. We have reason to believe your client participated in the fraudulent alteration of a recorded deed. If you want to argue privilege in front of a judge while I hold up evidence of internal tampering, be my guest. But I suggest you preserve every byte of data on your servers. Because if a single email goes missing, I will move for sanctions that will make your malpractice insurance premiums skyrocket. She hung up on him. An hour later, her office line rang again. This time, the caller ID was blocked. Mia answered, listened for a moment, and then motioned for me to be silent. "Hello?" she said softly. I watched her face, her eyebrows knit together. "Okay," she said. "I understand. We will move as fast as we can. Thank you." She hung up and looked at me. That was a woman named Jenna. She said, she is a junior escrow officer at Seaside. She says the partners are in a panic. They are scrubbing the servers. She says if we don't get a court order to freeze their data by tomorrow, the email threads involving your mother are going to mysteriously vanish. We need to stop them. I said, panic rising in my chest. I am drafting the emergency motion now. Mia said, her fingers already flying across her keyboard. But Alice, you need to be ready. Your parents are going to know we are coming for the throat. They are going to hit back. They didn't wait long. The retaliation started the next morning. I was at my desk at work, trying to focus on a spreadsheet, when my phone buzzed. It was a notification from my bank. Alert. Auto payment to State Farm Insurance declined. I frowned. That was my car insurance. I had plenty of money in my checking account to cover it. I logged into my banking app. Account status, frozen. Reason, suspicious activity reported by joint account holder. I stared at the screen. My checking account wasn't a joint account. It was mine. But when I had opened it back in college, my father had co-signed for it so I could get a student waiver on the fees. I had forgotten he was even on there. He had never touched it in 10 years, until today. He had called the bank and flagged my own salary as suspicious, freezing my access to my own money. I felt a hot flush of anger. But before I could call the bank, my desk phone rang. Alice Ross. I answered. Alice, could you come to my office? It was my boss. Karen. Her voice sounded strange, stiff. I walked to her office, my stomach churning. Karen was usually warm, a mentor type who asked about my weekend. Today, she wouldn't meet my eyes. She was staring at her computer screen. Close the door, please, she said. I closed it and sat down. Alice, I received a very disturbing phone call this morning, Karen said, folding her hands on her desk. It was from your father. Martin Ross. My heart stopped. He called you? He did. He expressed deep concern about your well-being. He claims you have been suffering from a severe mental health crisis since your grandfather's passing. He mentioned erratic behavior, paranoia, and financial instability. I gripped the arms of the chair. Karen, that is not true, I said, my voice trembling. My father and I are in a legal dispute over my grandfather's estate. He is trying to discredit me. Karen sighed, looking pained. He insinuated that you might be using company resources to pursue a personal vendetta. He mentioned something about you printing legal documents on company time. I felt the blood drain from my face. I had printed the deeds at work when my printer ran out of ink. It was 5 pages. Alice, we value you here, Karen said. But we cannot have personal family drama spilling into the workplace. And frankly, if there are mental health issues, there aren't. I insisted. He is lying. He is trying to cut off my income. Karen held up a hand. I am not firing you, Alice, but I am placing you on a mandatory 2-week administrative leave, paid. I want you to take some time, sort this out, and get yourself together. We can't have this kind of distraction in the department. I walked out of the building carrying a box with my personal items, effectively suspended from the job I had worked 5 years to build. My father knew exactly where to hit. He knew my pride was wrapped up in my independence. He wanted to show me that I was only independent because he allowed it. I sat in my car in the parking lot and opened Facebook. I shouldn't have done it, but I needed to know what they were saying. There it was, a post from Claire Ross, tagged with Martin Ross. It was a photo of them standing on the beach at Seabrook Bay, looking wistful. It has been a difficult few months since we lost Dad. We are doing our best to honor his legacy and protect the assets he worked so hard to build. Sadly, grief affects everyone differently, and we are currently navigating some painful misunderstandings within the family. We ask for prayers and privacy as we try to help our daughter through a very confusing and unstable time. We only want what is best for her, even when she cannot see it herself. They ended with 2 hashtags about family and grief. It was a masterclass in manipulation. To the outside world, it was a loving plea from concerned parents. To me, it was a declaration of war. They were painting me as the crazy daughter before the truth could even come out. The comments were already piling up. So sorry you are going through this. Claire, praying for Alice. Mental health is so hard. You are such good parents to stand by her. I threw my phone onto the passenger seat. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive to their house and burn it down. Instead, I drove to the one person I hoped hadn't turned on me yet. Ethan texted me an hour later. Meet me at the Daily Grind on 4th. Don't tell Mom. I sat in the back corner of the coffee shop, wearing sunglasses to hide my swollen eyes. Ethan walked in 10 minutes late, looking like he hadn't slept in a week. He was wearing a hoodie, hood up, which made him look even younger than 28. He slid into the booth opposite me. He didn't order anything. Did you see the Facebook post? He asked quietly. I saw it. I said, they got me suspended from work. Ethan, Dad called Karen. Ethan winced. He put his head in his hands. I am sorry. Alice, I am so sorry. Stop apologizing and tell me what is going on. I said, you live there. What are they doing? They are freaking out, Ethan said, his voice muffled by his hands. When the lawsuit got served, Mom threw a vase at the wall. Dad has been on the phone with lawyers nonstop. They are liquidating stuff. Alice, they sold the boat yesterday. They are trying to move money offshore before the court freezes anything. I leaned forward. Ethan, I need you to tell me the truth. Did you know? He looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed. I didn't know about the forgery, he said. I swear. I thought they pressured Grandpa into signing something. I didn't know they faked it. But you knew something. I said. He nodded. He pulled his phone out of his pocket. I heard them. He whispered. About 2 months ago. It was right after the funeral. I came home late, and they were in the study. The door was cracked. He swiped at his screen, his thumb shaking. Mom was screaming. She said, he only signed because he trusted us to handle the taxes. We have to fix this before the will is read. And Dad said, the deed to Alice doesn't matter if we get this new one recorded first. The timeline is everything. My stomach twisted. So they knew. I said, they knew Grandpa had already given it to me. Yes, Ethan said. And Alice? There is something else. He tapped on his phone and slid it across the table to me. It was a voice memo file. Grandpa voicemail. May 4th. May 4th. That was 2 weeks before he died. I saved this, Ethan said. I don't know why. I just missed his voice. But I listened to it again last night, and I realized what he was saying. I put the phone to my ear and pressed play. Grandpa's voice was weak, breathless, but distinct. Hey, Ethan, it is Grandpa. I am just calling to say hi. Your mother was just here. She had me sign a bunch of papers, said I didn't understand the tax code. Maybe I don't anymore. My head is so foggy. He paused, and I could hear the oxygen machine hissing in the background. I just hope I didn't mess anything up. I told the lawyer the condo is for Alice. It is hers. If I sign something that says different... Well, I didn't mean to. You tell her that, okay? The condo is yours, sweetheart. No matter what anyone says. Okay. Love you, kiddo. The message ended. I sat there, the silence of the coffee shop rushing back in. If I signed something that says different, I didn't mean to. He knew, even in his confusion, he knew they were tricking him, and he had tried to leave a breadcrumb. Can I have this? I asked, my voice thick. Ethan nodded. I already emailed it to you. He reached across the table and took my hand. His palm was sweaty. I am done. Alice, he said. I am done covering for them. I am moving out tonight. I am going to stay with a friend. If you need me to testify, if you need me to tell the judge what I heard, I will do it. I squeezed his hand. Thank you. Ethan. He looked at me, his face full of a shame that didn't belong to him. Go get them. Alice. The next day, the dam broke. Mia's emergency motion had worked. The judge had ordered Seaside Title to produce every document related to the transaction within 24 hours or face a contempt charge. Their lawyer had folded. I was sitting in Mia's office when the digital file dump arrived. It was gigabytes of data. Mia and I spent 6 hours combing through it. Most of it was boring: tax forms, insurance binders, standard disclosures. But then we found the email thread. It was dated February 28th. From Claire Ross to Sarah Jenkins, Seaside Title Officer. Subject: urgent. Deed prep. Sarah. We need to expedite the updated deeds. Henry is failing fast. We cannot wait for the trust review. Please prepare a quitclaim moving the property to Bayview Haven LLC immediately. I will handle the execution. From Sarah Jenkins to Claire Ross. Mrs. Ross. Per our previous conversation, the title search shows a conflicting draft deed to Alice Ross. We need to clear that up before we can record a transfer to the LLC. Also, since Alice Ross is the grantor on the quitclaim, she will need to be present to sign. From Claire Ross to Sarah Jenkins. I told you, Alice is unavailable. She is traveling for work. I have power of attorney. Just send me the document. We need this recorded before the end of the week. Do not drag your feet on this, Sarah, or we will take our business to a different agency. Mia pointed at the screen. There it is, she said. She explicitly acknowledges that you were unavailable. She asks for the document to be sent to her, and she threatens them. We kept scrolling. We found a draft of the warranty deed. Grantor. Henry Caldwell. Grantee. Alice Ross. It was dated January. It was real. It was in the system. Then, a week later, the new draft. Grantor. Alice Ross. Grantee. Bayview Haven. LLC. There was no explanation for the change, no email from me authorizing it, no phone log of me calling them, just Claire's demand, and then the switch. But the smoking gun, the absolute proof of forgery, was still circumstantial. We had Claire asking for the deed. We had the notary who was a known crook, but we didn't have the moment of the crime. Until the court hearing 3 days later, the courtroom was cold and smelled of floor wax. My parents weren't there, only their high-priced attorney from Langford, Pike and Cole. He looked bored, checking his watch as if this hearing was a nuisance, but the judge, a stern woman named Judge Patterson, was not bored. She was reading the affidavit Mia had filed regarding Seaside Title's delays. Mr. Henderson, Judge Patterson said, looking over her glasses at the title company's lawyer. This court does not look kindly on discovery abuse. You have produced the emails. But where are the internal notes? Where are the escrow officer's daily logs? We are gathering them, Your Honor. Henderson stammered. It takes time to— You have until 5 o'clock today, the judge snapped. Or I am sending the sheriff to seize your servers. Mia leaned over to me. This is it, she whispered. They are going to panic. She was right. That evening, at 6 o'clock. Mia got a text. Meet me. Sunset Park. By the duck pond. Come alone. It was Jenna. Mia called me. Pick me up. We are going to the park. Sunset Park was empty, the shadows lengthening across the grass. We found Jenna sitting on a bench, hugging a large tote bag. She looked young, maybe 24, and terrified. She kept looking over her shoulder at the parking lot. You are Jenna? Mia asked gently, sitting down next to her. Jenna nodded. She didn't look at us. She looked at her hands. I can't lose my job, she whispered, but I can't go to jail for them. Mr. Henderson told us today that if we hid anything, we could be charged with obstruction. You are doing the right thing. I said, just tell us what happened. Jenna took a deep breath. She reached into her bag and pulled out a manila envelope. I was the assistant on the closing, she said, Sarah, the senior officer. She takes direction from Mrs. Ross. Your mother brings them a lot of business. She opened the envelope. When the quitclaim deed came back, the one signed by you, Jenna looked at me. I was the one who processed the mail. I opened the package. She paused, her voice shaking. The signature page. It looked weird. The paper was a different weight than the rest of the document, like it had been printed on a different machine, and the staple holes didn't line up. It had been unstapled and restapled. She pulled out a photo printed on glossy paper. I took a picture of it. She said, because I thought I messed up the printing, I texted Sarah to ask if I should reprint it. She handed me the photo. It showed the document on a desk. You could clearly see the mismatch in the paper white, and you could see the staple holes, 3 little punctures where the original page had been ripped off. Sarah came running to my desk. Jenna continued. She snatched the document away. She told me to shred the original signature page immediately. She said, Mrs. Ross brought in a corrected page. Use this one. Jenna reached into the envelope again, but I didn't shred everything. She whispered. She pulled out a crumpled, jagged strip of paper. I emptied the shredder bin that night. She said, and I saw this. It must have gotten jammed at the top. I looked at the strip of paper. It was vertical. It contained the edge of a document. You could see part of a signature. It wasn't Alice Ross. It was Henry. Just the letters Henry, written in a shaky, familiar hand. My breath caught. Wait, Mia said. Grabbing the strip, this is from the signature page they destroyed? Yes, Jenna said. I looked at Mia. Putting the pieces together, they didn't just forge my signature on a new deed. I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. They took a signature page that Grandpa had signed, maybe for the insurance, and they tried to use it, but they realized it wouldn't work because the deed needed my name, so they shredded Grandpa's signature and replaced it with the forgery of mine. Jenna nodded. But before they shredded it, I took a picture of the original document they tried to pass off. Jenna said, the one they swapped out. She handed me one last photo. It was a digital printout from her phone camera roll. Date taken, March 10th. The photo showed a document on a hospital tray table. It was titled Warranty Deed. Grantor, Henry Caldwell. Grantee, Alice Ross. Grandpa's hand was in the frame, holding a pen, pressing down on the signature line. The ink was wet, and in the background, blurred but unmistakable, was my mother. Claire was standing over him. She was wearing a blue silk blouse, the one she wore to Easter brunch. Her hand was resting on his shoulder, not in comfort, but with pressure. Her face was turned slightly toward the camera, unaware she was in the frame. Her expression was unreadable. It wasn't sad. It wasn't loving. It was focused, predatory. She was watching the pen. She was watching him sign the deed to me. She knew. She had stood there and watched him give me the house. She had let him sign it, probably telling him she would take care of recording it. And then she had taken that paper, walked out of the room, and destroyed it. She had erased his last wish before the ink was even dry. I stared at the photo, the image of my mother, the woman who had criticized my posture and bought me my prom dress. Watching her own father sign a document she intended to burn. It wasn't just fraud. It was a violation of a dying man's trust. It was the ultimate betrayal. I felt a tear slide down my cheek, hot and angry. Alice? Mia asked softly. I looked up at her, then at Jenna. This is it, I said. My voice hard as stone. This proves everything. They intercepted the real deed and replaced it with the fake one. I looked back at the photo of my mother. She didn't just steal the money. I whispered, she stole the truth. I handed the photo to Mia. Burn them, I said. Burn them to the ground. The conference room at Langford. Pike and Cole was designed to intimidate. It was a glass box suspended 40 stories above the city, offering a panoramic view of the skyline that my parents felt they owned by birthright. The table was a slab of black marble, cold to the touch, and the air conditioning was set to a temperature that required a blazer. I sat at the far end, next to Mia. My hands were folded in my lap, gripping each other so tightly that my knuckles were white. At the other end sat my parents. Martin and Claire Ross looked like a catalog image of dignified grief. My father wore a navy suit that cost more than my car. His silver hair brushed back, his face a mask of weary patience. My mother was in charcoal gray, wearing a simple pearl necklace, her hands resting delicately on a leather portfolio. They did not look at me. They looked at the point in space just above my left shoulder, as if acknowledging my presence would be too painful to bear. Flanking them were 3 attorneys. The lead counsel, a man named Mr. Sterling, had a voice like oiled leather. Miss Ross, Miss Turner. Sterling began, opening a thick binder. We are here today because, despite the unfortunate escalation of this matter, Martin and Claire love their daughter. They are deeply pained by this rift. They want to resolve this privately, with dignity, and without dragging the family name through the mud of a public trial. Mia didn't blink. We are here, Mr. Sterling, because your clients forged a deed and sold my client's property, she said. Sterling smiled, a tight, condescending expression. We dispute that characterization, of course. However, we recognize that litigation is costly and damaging for everyone involved. Therefore, we have prepared a comprehensive settlement offer to put this misunderstanding behind us. He slid a document across the black marble. It hissed as it moved. Mia picked it up. She put on her reading glasses and scanned the pages. The room was silent, save for the hum of the ventilation system. I watched my mother. She was tracing the rim of her water glass with a manicured finger. Over and over again. She looked calm. But I knew that tick. She was terrified. Mia looked up. $300,000. She read aloud. My heart skipped a beat. $300,000. It was a life-changing amount of money. It was enough to pay off my student loans. It was enough to put a down payment on a house of my own. Not a beach condo, but something real. It was enough to start over. Sterling nodded. Paid in a lump sum within 30 days, he said. In exchange, Alice will sign a full release of all claims. She will withdraw the civil suit. She will agree to a permanent non-disparagement clause and a strict confidentiality agreement. He paused, leaning forward, and crucially, the agreement contains a specific clause stating that no wrongdoing is admitted by any party. The transfer of the condo will be characterized as an estate planning error rectified by this settlement. I felt a wave of nausea rise in my throat. An error. They wanted me to sign a piece of paper that said it was all a mistake, a clerical mix-up. They wanted to buy my silence for $300,000 so they could go back to their country club and tell their friends that their unstable daughter had finally calmed down. Mia looked at me. She didn't signal me one way or the other. She let the silence hang. I looked at Martin. He finally met my eyes. His gaze was hard, pleading, and threatening all at once. Alice, he said, his voice rough. Take the deal. This has gone on long enough. You are suspended from your job. You are drowning in debt. This sets you up. It is what Henry would have wanted, for you to be secure. Don't use his name, I whispered. Excuse me? Sterling asked. I said don't use his name. I said louder. Martin's jaw tightened. We are trying to help you. Alice, you are trying to buy me. I said, you stole an asset worth $500,000, and now you are offering me 60 cents on the dollar to promise I won't tell anyone you are thieves. Alice, Claire said, her voice trembling with manufactured emotion. Please, we are a family. Mia placed a hand on my arm. We need a recess. Mia said, we will step out to discuss the offer. Sterling gestured to the door. Take your time. I walked out of the conference room, my legs feeling like lead. The hallway was lined with abstract art and plush carpeting. I walked to the window at the end of the hall and pressed my forehead against the cool glass. $300,000. I could walk away. I could take the money and never speak to them again. I could end the stress, the sleepless nights, the fear of the unknown. I could just let them win the narrative. As long as I got the cash, it was so tempting. I was tired. I was so incredibly tired. Alice? I turned. It was Ethan. He had been sitting in the lobby, not allowed in the conference room. He looked terrible. His skin was sallow, and he had lost weight. He walked over to me, looking over his shoulder to make sure our parents weren't coming out. "Are you going to take it?" he asked. "I don't know." I said, "It is a lot of money." Ethan let out a shaky breath. He leaned against the wall, sliding down until he was crouching. "You should take it," he whispered. I looked at him, surprised. "I thought you were on my side." "I am," he said. "That is why I'm telling you. Alice, you have to take the money and run. Because if you don't, if you take this to trial, there won't be anything left to take." "What do you mean?" Ethan looked up at me, his eyes wide with fear. "They are broke, Alice, completely." I frowned. "I know they have liquidity issues, but—" "No," he interrupted. "You don't understand. It is worse than that. I heard Dad on the phone with his broker yesterday. They are leveraged to the hilt. The house in Glenford Heights? It has 3 mortgages on it. The boat wasn't sold. It was repossessed. Martin's business hasn't made a profit in 2 years. He swallowed hard. The money from the condo sale. The $500,000? It didn't go into a savings account. It went to cover a margin call on some high-risk futures Dad bought. It is gone, Alice. All of it." I stared at him. The floor seemed to tilt. "So where is the $300,000 coming from?" I asked. Ethan laughed, a dry, hysterical sound. "They are borrowing it from a hard money lender at 20% interest," he said. "They are betting everything that they can shut you up, save their reputation, and maybe land one big deal next quarter to pay it all back." He stood up and grabbed my shoulders. "If you go to court, you expose them. The lenders will call the loans. The creditors will swarm. They will file for bankruptcy. The house, the cars, everything will be seized. If you win a judgment for $500,000, you will never see a dime of it because they will be destitute." He looked at me with tears in his eyes. "If you want justice, go to court. But if you want money, take the settlement. It is the last cash they can get their hands on." I stepped back, reeling. They were ruined. They were hollowed out. The polished exterior was just a shell held together by debt and deceit. They weren't just protecting their reputation. They were fighting for their survival. And they had been willing to consume me to do it. I needed air. I needed to think. I went back to Mia. "I can't sign this today," I told her. "I need time." Mia nodded. "We will tell them we need 48 hours. We left the building. I didn't look at my parents as we walked out. I couldn't. I was afraid that if I looked at them, I would see the desperation Ethan had described. And I might actually feel sorry for them. And I didn't want to feel sorry for them. I wanted to hate them. 2 days passed. I sat in my apartment, staring at the settlement agreement. No wrongdoing is admitted. The words mocked me. Then, the phone rang. It was Detective Klein. "Ms. Ross," he said. His voice was different, heavier. "Yes." "Detective? I wanted to update you on the Lyle Garrett situation," he said. "We subpoenaed his records." I said, "We are waiting for—" "You won't be getting any testimony from him." Klein cut in. "Why not? Did he run?" "He is dead." "Alice?" The room went cold. "Dead?" I repeated. "Car accident," Klein said. "Last night, about 2 a.m, he went off the road on Route 9. Hit a tree. The car burned. Preliminary report says high blood alcohol content. Looks like a drunk driving accident." I sat down on the floor. The phone pressed to my ear. He was scared. I whispered. When we saw him, he was terrified. He said someone was watching. "I know," Klein said, "and I find the timing convenient. A key witness in a fraud investigation drives into a tree 2 days after we start pulling his files. It smells bad. Do you think—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "Do you think my parents—" Klein sighed. "Your parents are white-collar fraudsters. Alice, hiring a hitman is a big leap from forging a deed. It is possible Garrett was just a drunk who panicked. But I am not closing the file. In fact, I am widening it. What does that mean? It means I took the evidence you gave me, the photos from the title company, the memo, and I walked it over to the district attorney. My breath caught. And they are opening a formal investigation, Klein said. Not just into Garrett, into Martin and Claire Ross, elder abuse, grand larceny, forgery. They want to interview you. You are not just a plaintiff anymore. Alice, you are a witness for the state. I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking. A man was dead. Maybe it was an accident. Maybe it wasn't. But he was dead because of a lie my parents told. The darkness of what they had done was spreading like ink in water. It wasn't just about a condo. It was about lives. I looked at the settlement agreement on my table. If I signed it, I would be taking money from people who might have blood on their hands. I would be helping them cover up a chain of events that led to a man burning in a car on Route 9. I couldn't do it. But could I destroy them? The next morning, I was pacing my apartment, trapped in indecision, when my cell phone rang again. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Hello? Is this Alice Ross? A woman's voice. Professional. Brisk. Yes. This is Linda Greer from Harborline Bank. I am the compliance officer for the downtown branch. I don't bank with Harborline. I said, no. But your grandfather did. She said, Henry Caldwell. I stopped pacing. We are doing a routine audit of our safe deposit boxes, specifically those with long periods of inactivity. Mr. Caldwell has a box here. Box number 402. I thought the executor cleared everything out. I said, my mother. Ms. Greer interrupted. The box lists you as the sole deputy. It requires your signature to access. It seems your mother tried to access it 3 months ago. But we turned her away because her name wasn't on the authorized card. Only yours is. My mother had tried to get in and failed. What is in it? I asked. I cannot tell you that over the phone. Ms. Greer said, but the box is flagged for closure due to unpaid fees. If you don't come claim the contents within 48 hours, we have to drill it and turn the contents over to the State Unclaimed Property Division. I will be there in 20 minutes. I said. The bank vault was quiet and smelled of dust and old metal. Ms. Greer, a stern woman in a gray suit, led me to a small room. She placed a long, narrow metal box on the table. I signed the card. She left me alone. I opened the lid. The box was mostly empty. There were no stacks of cash, no diamonds. There was just a white envelope and a small silver USB drive. On the front of the envelope, in shaky cursive, was written, For Alice. Open when things get hard. I felt a lump form in my throat so painful I could barely swallow. I sat down on the hard chair and opened the envelope. The letter was written on yellow legal pad paper. The handwriting was jagged, the letters sometimes drifting off the line, but the message was clear. My dearest Alice, if you are reading this, I am gone, and I suspect things are not going well. I know your parents. Honey, I love them, but I know them. Claire has always believed that appearance is the same thing as truth, and Martin has been drowning for a long time. And he is the kind of man who will climb on top of anyone to keep his head above water. Even you. I gave you the condo because it is the only place you were ever allowed to be yourself. It is where you laughed. It is where you didn't have to be perfect. I wanted you to have a sanctuary, but I have a bad feeling. The last few times they came to visit, they asked too many questions about the deed. They brought papers I couldn't read well. I signed some things to get them to stop yelling. But I never signed away your house. I made a video, just in case. Use it if you have to. But I hope you don't have to. Don't let them make you feel small. Alice, you were always the biggest person in that family. Love, Grandpa. I wiped my face with my sleeve, soaking the fabric. He knew. He had sat in that nursing home, watching his own daughter circle like a shark, and he had planned ahead to save me. I picked up the USB drive. I didn't wait to go home. I pulled my laptop out of my bag right there in the bank viewing room. I plugged it in. There was one file. Truth. MP4. I clicked it. The video opened. It was shaky at first, the camera angle adjusting. It looked like it was filmed on a phone propped up against a water pitcher. Grandpa Henry appeared on the screen. He was in his hospital gown. the one he wore during his final weeks. He looked thin, his skin papery and translucent, but his eyes were sharp. He looked directly into the lens. "Okay, is it recording?" he muttered. "Yes, red light is on." He cleared his throat. "My name is Henry Caldwell. Today is April 10th. I am of sound mind, though my body is giving up on me." He leaned forward. "I want to be clear. I have deeded my property at Seabrook Bay to my granddaughter, Alice Ross. I did this with my attorney, Mr. Caldwell. It is done." He took a breath, wincing slightly. "My daughter, Claire, and her husband, Martin, have been pressuring me to put the property into a trust or an LLC. They say it is for taxes. They say it is for my protection. But I know it is because they need the equity." He pointed a trembling finger at the camera. "I have told them no, but I am old, and I am tired. If anything happens, if a document appears after I'm gone that says I transferred that house to anyone other than Alice, it is a lie. It is a fake. I did not sign it. Or if I did, they tricked me into it when I was medicated." His voice broke, and he looked down for a second. "Alice, if you are watching this, I am sorry. I am sorry I couldn't protect you better, but you have to fight them. Honey, not for the house, but for yourself. Don't let them rewrite who you are." The video ended. I sat in the silence of the vault, staring at the black screen. I saw the reflection of my own face. I didn't look like the scared girl who had run out of her parents' house crying. I didn't look like the beaten-down employee who had been suspended. I looked like him. I had his chin. I had his eyes. And now, I had his voice. Ethan had said they were broke. He had said that if I went to court, I would ruin them. But they had already ruined themselves. They had spent decades building a house of cards. And then they had tried to use my inheritance to shore up the foundation. If I signed that settlement, I would be the final mortar in their wall of lies. I would be helping them deceive the next lender, the next victim. I would be letting them get away with the death of Lyle Garrett, because without a trial, his death would remain just a drunk driving accident. I closed the laptop. I put the letter and the USB drive into my bag. I walked out of the bank and into the bright, blinding sunlight of the city. I called Mia. "Are they still waiting on an answer?" I asked. "Yes," Mia said. "Sterling called me an hour ago. He said the offer expires at 5 o'clock today. He is pressing hard. Alice, set up a meeting." I said, "For the signing?" Mia asked, sounding relieved. "Just set it up," I said. An hour later, I walked back into Langford, Pike and Cole, the same room, the same black marble table, the same people. Martin looked hopeful. Claire looked anxious. Sterling looked bored. A pen already in his hand. The checkbook sitting on the table. "We have the agreement ready for signature," Sterling said, sliding the papers toward me. $300,000. The check is cut and ready to be released upon signature. I looked at the check. It was a beautiful piece of paper. Blue security patterns. 3 zeros. I looked at my parents. "You almost had me," I said softly. Martin frowned. "Alice, just sign the papers." I thought about the money. I continued. I thought about how easy it would be. I reached into my bag. But then I went to the bank. I said. Claire went still. Her eyes locked on my bag. "The bank?" she whispered. "Harbor Line," I said. "Box 402, the one you tried to open." "Mom, but you couldn't, because Grandpa knew." I pulled out the USB drive. I held it up. "He left me a letter," I said, "and he left me a video." I placed the drive on the table. It made a small click against the marble. "He is on record. Dad, he looks into the camera and says that if any deed appears transferring the house to an LLC, it is a lie. He says you pressured him. He says you are doing it for the equity." Martin's face turned a color I had never seen before. A grayish, ashy white. "That is not admissible." Sterling stammered, though he looked suddenly very alert. "Hearsay." "It is a dying declaration," Mia said, her voice ringing with triumph. "And it corroborates the testimony of the whistleblowers at the title company and the text messages we just subpoenaed." I looked at Claire. She was trembling now. Violent, uncontrollable shivers. "I am not signing your agreement." I said, "I am not taking your money." "Alice, please." Martin rasped. He stood up, bracing himself on the table. "You don't know what you are doing. You will destroy us. We will lose everything. You lost everything a long time ago." I said, "You just didn't tell anyone." I slid the settlement papers back across the table. "We are going to court." I said, "But—" Martin started, his voice cracking. I stood up. I felt 10 feet tall. "I am not letting you rewrite what he did for me," I said, "and I'm not letting you rewrite me." I turned to Mia. "Let's go. We have a meeting with the district attorney." I walked out of the room. Behind me, I heard the sound of a glass shattering against the wall, and the sound of my mother screaming my name. I didn't stop. I walked into the elevator and pressed the button for the lobby. As the doors closed, shutting out the sight of their ruin, I finally, for the first time in months, took a full, deep breath. The morning of the hearing, the sky over the county courthouse was a brilliant, unyielding blue. It felt strange that on the day my family was set to self-destruct, the world looked so pristine. I arrived early with Mia. The hallway outside courtroom 304 was already buzzing. I had expected a quiet procedural hearing, but word had spread. The combination of a prominent local family, a high-value real estate dispute, and the rumored involvement of the DA's office had drawn a crowd. I saw faces I recognized from my childhood. There was Mrs. Higgins, who used to run the bakery in Seabrook Bay where Grandpa Henry took me for donuts. There were a few distant cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, looking uncomfortable in their Sunday best. And sitting in the back row of the gallery, looking terrified, were the Masons, the couple who had bought the condo, now realizing their dream retirement home was a crime scene. My parents arrived 10 minutes before the start time. They walked in a phalanx of dark suits. Martin looked thinner than I had ever seen him, his eyes darting around the room, assessing the threat level. Claire was wearing a cream-colored suit that screamed innocence, her hair sprayed into an impenetrable helmet of perfection. They didn't look at me. They stared straight ahead, vibrating with a tension that felt like a high-pitched frequency in the air. Judge Patterson entered, her black robe billowing. She took the bench and looked down at us over her spectacles. "Civil action number 4920. Ross versus Bayview Haven LLC et al." She announced, "We are here on plaintiff's motion to invalidate deed and impose a constructive trust." Mia stood up. She was calm, precise, and deadly. "Your Honor," she began, her voice projecting clearly to the back of the room, "this case is not about a clerical error. It is not about a family dispute. It is about a deliberate, calculated act of fraud committed against a dying man and his heir." Mia moved through the timeline with the efficiency of a surgeon. She put up a large foam board on an easel. It was a timeline. "January 10th, she said, pointing to the first hash mark. "Henry Caldwell instructs his attorney to prepare a warranty deed transferring his condo to his granddaughter, Alice Ross." She held up the affidavit from Mr. Caldwell's firm. "February 28th, she continued. "Defendant Claire Ross emails Seaside Title Group, demanding they ignore the existing draft and prepare a new deed transferring the property to a shell company, Bayview Haven, LLC." She projected the email on the courtroom screen. The text was damning. "I will handle the execution. March 10th, Mia said, 2 days before the alleged signing of the fraudulent deed. She called her first witness, Jenna, the former escrow assistant. Jenna took the stand, her hands shaking. Under Mia's gentle questioning, she told the story of the shredded document. She described how Claire had brought in a pre-signed signature page that didn't match the paper stock of the deed. She described the pressure from her boss to hide the evidence, and then Mia put the photos on the screen. The courtroom went silent. There was the photo of the hospital room, my grandfather, frail and weak, signing a document, and there, hovering over him like a vulture, was my mother. "The timestamp on the photo is March 10th, Mia said, "but the deed recorded by the defendants, the one transferring the property to the LLC, is dated March 12th, and the signature on that recorded deed is not Henry Caldwell's. It is Alice Ross's. Mia turned to the jury box. Even though there was no jury today, it was just for the judge. "Why did they switch the deeds?" she asked rhetorically. "Because they realized a deed from Henry to the LLC might be challenged. But if Alice Ross herself signed it away, then it looks like a voluntary gift. The only problem was, Alice Ross was in Chicago. She called our next witness, Dr. Aris, a forensic document examiner with 30 years of experience with the FBI. Dr. Aris was a dry academic man who spoke in absolutes. He placed 2 images side by side on the screen, my signature from my driver's license and passport, and the signature on the quitclaim deed. The question's signature shows significant signs of simulation. Dr. Aris testified, using a laser pointer to circle the loops of the letters. The pen pressure is hesitating. The tremor in the downstroke suggests a slow, deliberate tracing rather than a fluid, natural motion. Furthermore, the slant is inconsistent with the known exemplars of Miss Ross. "What is your conclusion?" Mia asked. "It is my professional opinion, to a high degree of certainty, that the signature on the quitclaim deed is a forgery." "Doctor," Aris said. I looked at my parents. Martin was staring at the table. Claire was writing furiously on a legal pad, her face tight. Mia rested her case. It was the defense's turn. "Mr. Sterling stood up. He looked less confident than he had in the conference room. He called Claire Ross to the stand. My mother walked to the witness box with her head held high. She smoothed her skirt and smiled at the judge, a practiced, socialite smile that usually worked on country club maitre d's. "Mrs. Ross," Sterling said, "can you explain the creation of Bayview Haven LLC?" Claire cleared her throat. "Yes," she said, her voice steady. "My father, Henry, was very concerned about taxes. He knew that if the property went directly to Alice, she would be burdened with capital gains and inheritance taxes she couldn't afford. We discussed it at length. We created the LLC to hold the asset, protect it, and eventually distribute the income to Alice. So, the transfer was for Alice's benefit?" "Absolutely," Claire said, looking at me with sad eyes. "We were trying to protect her. Alice is not good with financial details. She gets overwhelmed. We were just acting as responsible guardians." "And the signature?" Sterling asked. "Did you forge Alice's signature?" Claire let out a small, incredulous laugh. "Of course not. Alice signed that document. She came to the house before her trip to Chicago. She was rushing. She was stressed. But she signed it. She might not remember it now. Grief does terrible things to the memory. But she signed it." Sterling sat down. Mia stood up for cross-examination. She didn't bring a notepad. She didn't need one. "Mrs. Ross," Mia said, walking to the podium, "you say Alice signed the deed at your house before she went to Chicago?" "Yes," Claire said. "That would have been around March 9th or 10th? "I believe so, yes." "And you say you created the LLC to protect Alice from taxes?" "Correct. Then why," Mia asked, her voice dropping an octave, "did you use the proceeds from the sale of the condo, $508,000, to pay off a margin loan on a trading account held solely in the name of Martin Ross?" "Objection!" Sterling shouted, jumping up. "Relevance goes to motive." "Your Honor," Mia shot back, "the witness claims the LLC was for the plaintiff's benefit. I have bank records showing the account was drained within 48 hours of the sale to cover personal debts of the defendants." Overruled. Judge Patterson said, "Answer the question." "Mrs. Ross," Claire blinked. The polish cracked. "Just a fraction. We were borrowing against the liquidity." She stammered. "It was a temporary loan. We intended to pay it back into the trust. Intended to." Mia repeated. "Just like you intended to follow Henry's wishes?" Mia picked up the remote for the screen. "Let's talk about Henry's wishes. You testified that he wanted this LLC structure, that he agreed to it." "Yes," Claire said. "He trusted us completely." Mia hit the button. The courtroom lights dimmed slightly as the video began to play. It was the video from the USB drive. Henry's face, large and pixelated, filled the room, the sound of his breathing, heavy and wet, echoed off the wood paneling. "My name is Henry Caldwell." Claire's hand flew to her mouth. She hadn't seen this. She didn't know it existed. "I want to be clear. I have deeded my property at Seabrook Bay to my granddaughter, Alice Ross." I watched my mother. Her eyes went wide. She stared at the image of her dying father, the man she had silenced, speaking from the grave. "If a document appears after I'm gone that says I transferred that house to anyone other than Alice, it is a lie. It is a fake." The whispers in the gallery started. A low hum of shock. The Masons were looking at each other, horrified. "Don't let them rewrite who you are." The video ended. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Mia looked at Claire. "Mrs. Ross," Mia said softly, "was your father lying?" Claire opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She looked at Martin. He was refusing to look at her. He was staring at the table, his face ashen. "I asked you a question," Mia said, harder this time. "Was he lying? Or did you switch the papers?" Claire began to shake. It started in her hands and traveled up her arms until her whole body was vibrating. "He didn't understand," she burst out. Her voice was shrill, ugly. He was old. He didn't understand the market. He was going to give a $500,000 asset to a girl who can barely pay her rent. "So you decided to take it," Mia said. "I saved it," Claire screamed, standing up in the witness box. "I saved this family. Do you have any idea what kind of pressure we are under? Do you know what it costs to maintain our life?" She pointed a shaking finger at Martin. "He lost it all," she shrieked. "He gambled it away on futures. He told me we were going to lose the house. He told me we were going to be on the street if we didn't come up with cash." Martin's head snapped up. "Claire, shut up," he roared. "Don't you tell me to shut up," Claire yelled back, abandoning all pretense of dignity. "I fixed your mess. I went to the hospital. I got the papers. I dealt with the notary. You just sat in your office and drank while I cleaned up your filth." The courtroom erupted. Reporters were typing furiously. The judge was banging her gavel. But the sound was drowned out by the spectacle of the Ross dynasty imploding. "I forged it," Claire screamed, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. "I traced her signature. Because she is ungrateful. She doesn't deserve it. We paid for everything she has. It was ours. It was ours by right." "Order!" Judge Patterson shouted. "Order in this court." Two bailiffs moved toward the witness stand. Claire collapsed back into the chair, sobbing, her face buried in her hands. Martin was staring at her with pure hatred. Mia looked at the judge. "No further questions, Your Honor." The judge looked at Claire, then at Martin. She looked physically disgusted. She shuffled her papers. The room quieted down, but the energy was electric. "I have heard enough," Judge Patterson said. Her voice was ice cold. She looked at Mr. Sterling. "Counsel, your clients have not only admitted to fraud in open court, but they have also implicated themselves in elder abuse and conspiracy." She turned to me. "Ms. Ross, I am granting your motion. The quitclaim deed dated March 12th is hereby declared void ab initio. It is a forgery and a nullity. Title to the property at 442 Ocean View Drive is reverted to the estate of Henry Caldwell, and pursuant to the valid warranty deed of January 10th, is confirmed as the sole property of Alice Ross." She turned to the Masons, to the occupants, Mr. and Mrs. Mason. "I am sorry. You are victims of this fraud as well. Your claim for reimbursement is against the defendants, not the property. You will have 30 days to vacate, and I suggest you retain separate counsel to pursue damages against Mr. and Mrs. Ross and the title company immediately." She turned back to my parents. "As for the defendants, Claire and Martin Ross, I am issuing an immediate freeze on all remaining assets, real and personal, to preserve what little capital remains for the restitution of the victims." She paused, removing her glasses, and, given the sworn testimony I have just heard, admitting to forgery and the implication of coercion regarding a notary public who is now deceased, I am referring this entire transcript to the district attorney's office for immediate criminal prosecution. Bailiff, please ensure the defendants do not leave the building until the DA's investigators arrive. She banged the gavel. Court is adjourned. The sound of the gavel was the sweetest thing I had ever heard. I didn't move for a moment. I just sat there, breathing. It was over. The lie was dead. Mia leaned over and squeezed my hand. "We did it," she whispered. I looked over at the defense table. Martin was slumped in his chair, his head in his hands. Claire was staring blankly at the wall, her mascara running in black streaks down her face, looking like a broken doll. They weren't powerful anymore. They were just two desperate people who had flown too close to the sun and burned everyone they loved on the way down. We walked out of the courtroom and into a wall of flashbulbs. The press had multiplied during the hearing. Microphones were shoved in my face. Alice, how do you feel about your mother's confession? Do you think your parents will go to jail? What do you have to say to other families dealing with elder abuse? I didn't answer. I just kept walking, Mia acting as a shield, guiding me through the throng. Behind us, the doors opened again, and a hush fell over the hallway. Martin and Claire came out. They weren't in handcuffs yet. That would come later, after the indictment, but they looked like prisoners. Their lawyers were trying to hustle them toward the elevators, but the cameras were merciless. They captured every inch of their shame, the high society couple, the pillars of Glenford Heights, reduced to grifters. Claire looked at me as she passed. For a second, our eyes met. I expected anger. I expected hate. But there was nothing. Her eyes were empty. She had lost the mask. And without it, there was nobody home. I turned away. I walked down the marble steps of the courthouse, into the fresh air. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the plaza. Alice. I stopped. It was Ethan. He was running down the steps after me. He looked like a mess, his shirt untucked, his eyes swollen. He stopped a few feet away, panting. I just wanted to say. He choked on the words. "I am sorry," he said. "I am so sorry I didn't stand up sooner. I was a coward. I was so afraid of being cut off, of losing the car, the money. I let them do it to you." I looked at my brother. He was 28, but he looked 12. "It is okay." "Ethan," I said gently. "It is not okay," he said, wiping his nose. "They are going to jail, aren't they?" "Probably." I said. "Good," he said. It sounded harsh, but I heard the pain in it. "I am done. Alice, I am done with their money. I am done with their lies. I am going to get a job, a real one. I don't care if I have to wait tables. I want to be someone Grandpa would have been proud of." He looked at me, pleading for a connection. "Can I help you fix up the condo?" he asked. "I am pretty good with a hammer, and I work cheap." I smiled. It was the first real smile I had felt in months. "I would like that," I said. He hugged me then, a clumsy, desperate hug. I held him back. We were the only two left. The wreckage of our parents' ambition was burning behind us, but we were still standing. The story didn't end with a neat bow. My parents were indicted 2 weeks later on 12 counts of fraud, forgery, and grand larceny. The investigation into Lyle Garrett's death was reopened, casting a long, dark shadow over their defense. The Masons sued them for millions, forcing them into a bankruptcy that stripped them of the mansion, the cars, and every last shred of their status. I never got the $300,000. There was no money left to get, but I got the keys. 2 months later, I stood on the balcony of 442 Ocean View Drive. The Masons had moved out, leaving the place empty and echoing. I had spent the morning stripping the sterile gray paint off the walls, revealing the warm, sun-baked plaster underneath. I leaned against the railing, the one with the notch where the seagull had pecked it. The ocean was loud, a rhythmic crashing that drowned out the noise of the city, the lawyers, and the pain. The air smelled of salt and jasmine. I held the old photo Grandpa had given me in the hospital. I held it up against the horizon. The view matched perfectly. He had given me this place not just as a piece of property, but as a test. He wanted to see if I had the strength to claim it. He wanted to see if I could stand up and say, "This is mine." I took a deep breath of sea air. I had lost my parents. I had lost my job. I had lost my innocence about how dark the world could be. But I was standing on my own deck. The wind was in my hair, and for the first time in my life, the ground beneath my feet was solid. I put the photo in my pocket and turned back to the sliding glass door. Ethan was inside, sanding the cabinets, singing along to the radio. It was time to paint the walls blue. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It was an emotional journey, and I hope it resonated with you. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. Please drop a comment below with your country or city. If you enjoyed Alice's fight for justice, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. Let me know your thoughts on the ending. Did the parents get what they deserved? I can't wait to read your comments. See you in the next story.